Mycenae is an archaeological site in Greece, located about 90 kilometers southwest of Athens, in the northeastern Peloponnese. Argos is 11 kilometers to the south, Corinth, 48 kilometers to the north. From the hill on which the palace was located, one can see across the Argolid to the Saronic Gulf. In the 2nd millennium BC, Mycenae was one of the major centers of Greek civilization, a military stronghold which dominated much of southern Greece. The period of Greek history from about 1600 BC to about 1100 BC is called Mycenaean in reference to Mycenae. At its peak in 1350 BC, the citadel and lower town had a population of 30,000 and an area of 32 hectares. Name. Although the citadel was built by Greeks, the name Mycenae is thought not to be Greek but rather one of the many pre-Greek place names inherited by the immigrant Greeks. Legend has it that the name was connected to the Greek word myces. Thus, Pausanias ascribes the name to the legendary founder Perseus, who was said to have named it either after the cap of the sheath of his sword, or after a mushroom he had plucked on the site. The earliest written form of the name is Mycon, which is found in Homer. The reconstructed Mycenaean Greek name of the site is Mycenae, which has the form of a plural like Athanae. The change of a to e in more recent versions of the name is the result of a well-known sound change in later Attic Ionic history. Neolithic to Middle Bronze Age Mycenae, an Acropolis site, was continuously inhabited from the early Neolithic down through the early Hellardic and Middle Hellardic periods. Rainbow ware constitutes the earliest ceramic evidence discovered so far. Pottery material spanning the entire EHI through EHIII period was discovered in 1877 to 1878 by Starmatacus at a low depth in the 6th shaft grave in Grave Circle A. Further A&MH material was found beneath the walls and floors of the palace, on the summit of the Acropolis, and outside the Lion Gate in the area of the ancient cemetery. An AMH settlement was discovered near a freshwater well on top of the Calcano Hill southwest of the Acropolis. The first burials in pits or ciss graves manifest in the MH period on the west slope of the Acropolis, which was at least partially enclosed by the earliest circuit wall. Late Bronze Age. During the Bronze Age, the pattern of settlement at Mycenae was a fortified hill surrounded by hamlets and estates, in contrast to the dense urbanity on the coast. Since Mycenae was the capital of a state that ruled, or dominated, much of the eastern Mediterranean world, the rulers must have placed their stronghold in this less populated and more remote region for its defensive value. Since there are few documents on site with datable contents and since no dendrochronology has yet been performed upon the remains here, the events are listed here according to Hellardic period material culture. Late Hellardic I. Outside the partial circuit wall, Grave Circle B, named for its enclosing wall, contained 10 ciss graves in Middle Hellardic style and several shaft graves, sunk more deeply, with interments resting in cists. Richer grave goods mark the burials as possibly regal. Mounds over the top contained broken drinking vessels and bones from a repast, testifying to a more than ordinary farewell. Stelae surmounted the mounds. A walled enclosure, Grave Circle A, included 6 or shaft graves, with 9 female, 8 male, and 2 juvenile interments. Grave goods were more costly than in Circle B. The presence of engraved and inlaid swords and daggers, with spear points and arrowheads, leave little doubt that warrior chieftains and their families were buried here. Some marked objects obtained from the graves are the silver siege written, the Mask of Agamemnon, the Cup of Nestor, and weapons both votive and practical. Late Hellardic II. Alan Waste divided the 9 Tholos tombs of Mycenae into 3 groups of 3, each based on architecture. His earliest, the Cyclopean tomb, Epinophaonos, and the tomb of Aegisthus, are dated to LHIIA. Burial in Tholoi is seen as replacing burial in shaft graves. The care taken to preserve the shaft graves testifies that they were by then part of the royal heritage, the tombs of the ancestral heroes being more visible. The Thorloyal had been plundered either in antiquity, or in later historic times. Late Helardich III at a conventional date of 1350 BC, the fortifications on the Acropolis, and other surrounding hills, were rebuilt in a style known as Cyclopean because the blocks of stone used were so massive that they were thought in later ages to be the work of the one-eyed giants known as the Cyclopes. Within these walls, much of which can still be seen, successive monumental palaces were built. The final palace, remains of which are currently visible on the Acropolis of Mycenae, dates to the start of LHIII. 2. Earlier palaces must have existed, but they had been cleared away or built over. The construction of palaces at that time with a similar architecture was general throughout southern Greece. They all featured a megaron, or throne room, with a raised central hearth under an opening in the roof, which was supported by 4 columns in square around the hearth. A throne was placed against the center of a wall to the side of the hearth, allowing an unobstructed view of the ruler from the entrance. Frescoes adorned the plaster walls and floor. The room was accessed from a courtyard with a columned portico. A grand staircase led from a terrace below to the courtyard on the Acropolis. In the temple built within the citadel, a scarab of Queen Tia of Egypt, who was married to Amenhotep III, was placed in the room of the idols alongside at least one statue of either LHIII II or B1 type. Amenhotep III's relations with Mwkinu**Mukanar have corroboration from the inscription at Kom al-Hetan, but Amenhotep's reign is thought to align with late LHIII. 1. It is likely that Amenhotep's herald presented the scarab to an earlier generation, which then found the resources to rebuild the citadel as Cyclopean and then to move the scarab here. Wace's second group of Thorloyer dated between LHIIA and LHIIIB. Cato Faunos, Panagiotholis, and the Lion Tomb. The final group, Group 3, the Treasury of Atreus, the Tomb of Clytemnestra and the Tomb of the Genii, are dated to LHIIIB by a sherd under the threshold of the Treasury of Atreus, the largest of the 9 tombs. Like the treasury of Minyas at Orchomenus, the tomb had been looted of its contents and its nature as funerary monument had been forgotten. The structure bore the traditional name of treasury. The pottery phases on which the relative dating scheme is based do not allow very precise dating, even augmented by the few existing C14 dates due to the tolerance inherent in these. The sequence of further construction at Mycenae is approximately as follows. In the middle of LHIIIB, around 1250 BC or so, the Cyclopean wall was extended on the west slope to include Grave Circle A. The main entrance through the circuit wall was made grand by the best-known feature of Mycenae, the Lion Gate, through which passed his stepped ramp leading past Circle A and up to the palace. The Lion Gate was constructed in the form of a relieving triangle, in order to support the weight of the stones. An undecorated postern gate also was constructed through the north wall. One of the few groups of excavated houses in the city outside the walls lies beyond Grave Circle B and belongs to the same period. The House of Shields, the House of the Oil Merchant, the House of the Sphinxes, and the West House. These may have been both residences and workshops. Citadel facts and figures: circuit length 1105 m, preserved height up to 12.5 m, width 7.5-17 m, minimum stone required 145,215 cu/m or 14,420. Average stones time to move 1 block using men 2.125 days. Time to move all blocks using men 110.52 years. Time to move 1 block using oxen 0.125 days. Time to move all blocks using oxen 9.9 years based on 8-hour workday. The largest stones, including the lintels and gate jambs, weighed well over 20 tons. Some may have been close to 100 tons. Somewhat later, towards the end of LHIIIB, another extension to the citadel was undertaken. The wall was extended again on the northeast, with a sally port and also a secret passage through and under the wall, of corbelled construction, leading downward by some 99 steps to a cistern carved out of rock 15 meters below the surface. It was fed by a tunnel from a spring on more distant higher ground. Already in LHIII-1, Egypt knew Mycenae by name as a capital city on the level of Thebes and Knossos. During LHIIIB, Mycenae's political, military and economic influence likely extended as far as Crete, Pylos in the western Peloponnese, and to Athens and Thebes. Hellenic settlements already were being placed on the coast of Anatolia. A collision with the Hittite Empire over their sometime dependency at a then strategic location, Troy, was to be expected. In folklore, the powerful Pelopid family ruled many Greek states, one branch of which was the Attriid dynasty at Mycenae. Decline by 1200 BC, the power of Mycenae was declining. Finally, during the 12th century BC, Mycenaean dominance collapsed entirely. The eventual destruction of Mycenae formed part of the general Bronze Age collapse in the Greek mainland and beyond. Within a short time, around 1200 BC, all the palace complexes of southern Greece were burned, including that at Mycenae. This was traditionally attributed by scholars to a Dorian invasion of Greeks from the north, although many historians now doubt that this invasion caused the destruction of the Mycenaean centers. Displaced populations escaped to former colonies of the Mycenaeans in Anatolia and elsewhere, where they came to speak the Ionic dialect. Emily Vermeulen suggests that the disruption of commercial networks at the end of the 13th century BC was disastrous for Greece, and this was followed by the coming of the mysterious sea peoples, who caused chaos in the Aegean. According to Egyptian records, the sea peoples destroyed the Hittite Empire, then attacked the 19th and the 20th dynasties of Egypt. They may be related with the destruction of the Mycenaean centers. However, at the end of LHIIIB period, the Mycenaeans undertook an expedition against Troy, which meant that the sea was safe with no indication of destruction in the Aegean islands. Another theory has drought as the primary cause behind the Mycenaean decline, but there is no climatological evidence to support this. Manolis Andronikos claimed that internal conflicts involving social revolutions were the sole cause behind the destruction of Mycenaean sites, but this is contradicted by the fact that all the Mycenaean centers throughout Greece were destroyed almost simultaneously. Georgi Mylonas noticed that after 1200 BC, some attempt was made for recovery in Mycenae. He believes that in the Argolid there was internal fighting, and this was followed by the Dorian invasion. It seems that the Dorians moved southward gradually in small clans, until they managed to establish themselves. Amos Nur argues that earthquakes played a major role in the destruction of Mycenae and many other cities at the end of the Bronze Age. However, no conclusive evidence has been brought forward to confirm any theory of why the Mycenaean citadel and others throughout Greece fell almost simultaneously at this time. Whatever the cause, by the LHIIIC period, Mycenae was no longer a major power. Pottery and decorative styles were changing rapidly, with craftsmanship and fine art undergoing a decline. Although settlements were significantly reduced in size, the citadel remained occupied but never regained its earlier importance. Archaic and Classical periods. A temple dedicated to Hera was built on the summit of the Mycenaean citadel during the Archaic period. A Mycenaean contingent fought at Thermopylae and Plataea during the Persian Wars. In 468 BC, however, troops from Argos captured Mycenae, expelled the inhabitants and razed the fortifications. Revival and abandonment. Mycenae was briefly reoccupied in the Hellenistic period, when it could boast of theatre. The site was subsequently abandoned, and by the Roman period in Greece its ruins had become a tourist attraction. The ancient travel writer Pausanias, for example, visited the site and briefly described the prominent fortifications and the Lion Gate, still visible in his time. Political organization. It appears that the Mycenaean state was ruled by kings identified by the title Wanaka in the Linear B inscriptions at Knossos and Pylos. In the Homeric poems, the word form is annex, often translated in English as Lord. Some inscriptions with a list of offerings indicate that the king was probably divine, but the term for the king is usually accompanied by another name. It is doubtful that the Wanax was responsible for religious matters, but probably his title indicates that his right to rule was given by the god. The term Qac, which was later used in Greece for king, was apparently used for the chief of any group of people, or for a provincial official. The land possessed by the king is usually called taimino, a word that survived in classical Greece. Other important landowners were the Rawakaita, the leader of the people, and the Terita, the officials. Lauragietas is placed next to the king and he could be the leader of the army, but this is not confirmed by the inscriptions. Leonard Robert Palmer suggests that the Telestae were the men of Telis, the fiefholders. The Equita were a group of nobles, who followed the king in peace and war. There is also at least one instance of a person, Encleon at Pylos, who appears titleless in the written record, but whom modern scholars regard as being probably a king. From the existing evidence, it seems that the kingdom was further subdivided into 16 districts. The Korite was the governor of the district, and the Porokorite was the deputy. It is possible that the real names were Korita and Prokorita. The Darmokoro was an official appointment, but his duties are not very clear. The communal land was held at the hands of Darmo, or plot holders. It seems that Damo was a collective body of men, representing the local district. It is suggested that Qac had a council of elders, a Kairosiyar, but Palmer believes that it was an organization of bronze smiths.